So how do we interpret and apply standard deviation in our example, right? So based on our computations, right, the standard deviation that we got in CECA is 9.7234 customers. For CECB, it's 10.8878. So let's focus on CECA as an example. So in interpreting standard deviations and applying it, we use what is termed the 3 standard deviation rule. Okay, what does it mean? By definition, the 3 standard deviation rule means that almost all of your data should be within 3 standard deviations from your mean, right? So statisticians have already computed this, no? Just to justify why it has to be 3 standard deviations. So statisticians have already computed, for example, to illustrate the phenomenon of standard deviation. Let's say this is what statisticians call a normal curve. All right. So at the middle of the normal curve, you have your mean. All right. So the standard deviations, as I mentioned, are the level of spread from the mean. So for example, this is 1 standard deviation from the mean, left and right. And then wider still are your 2 standard deviations from your mean, and wider even still is 3 standard deviations of your mean. So everything under this curve are the different observations that you get, right? So for example, it has been computed that when you say 1 standard deviation from this mean, so all the observations under this area, right? For example, okay, under this area of 1 standard deviations from your mean, 68% of all the data that you will collect will fall under 1 standard deviation, right? If you include the area to encompass 2 standard deviations, it means that 95% of all data will be captured, and in 3 standard deviations, okay, all data that you will capture 99% of all data. So anything, all observations that are outside 3 standard deviations are what you call outliers or anomalies, right? So this is why we have your 3 standard deviation rule. Okay, so it means that all your data should be within 3 standard deviations of your mean. So if you express that at a formula, you will come up with something like this. Okay, the mean plus or minus 3 standard deviations. So if you want to compute that and substituting that, okay, our mean is 26, okay, and then plus or minus 3 because of 3 standard deviations times your standard deviation. So we got for CECA 9.7234, right? So these are 2, because this plus and minus, we have to do 2 computations. So we add first, okay, 26 plus 3 SD. This is the result, 55.1702. So this will reflect the upper, okay, the upper limit, this area. Okay, 55, and then 26 minus 3 times 9.7234, you will get negative 3.1702. So this is the lower limit of the 3 standard deviations. So how do we apply that, right, in this case? So you have your lower limit, which is negative 3, and then your upper limit, which is 55. So obviously, when we talk about people, obviously we cannot say that there are negative 3 people, right? So I guess the lowest figure that we can get there is 0, and then we just round this off, 55.1702 to 55. So interpreting the standard deviation using the 3 standard deviation rule, we can come up with this statement. Okay, based on our computations of standard deviation, the number of CEC customers in a given month should be between 0 and 55. So remember, in CECA and CECB, we only got samples, right? But we want to generalize the sample to the population. So doing the standard deviation, we can generalize that if we expand, for example, all things normal being considered in other CECs, for example, if we collect other data in CECs aside from CEC-A and CEC-B in Region 5, we can say that, okay, based on the normal curve, the number of CEC customers in a given month in Region 5 should be between 0 and 55. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, if you got a monthly CEC customer count of above 55, that's already an anomaly. Okay, at least statistically speaking, which means that you have to think, for example, in one CEC in 1 month you have had 75. So you have to really investigate. That does not fall under the normal curve in our region. So you have to investigate, why was there 75 CEC customers in that month? Maybe that CEC did something really different. So you have to investigate that. Obviously, on the other end, you don't have to worry because it's 0. Okay, so that is one way of interpreting standard deviation as a measure of dispersion.